folks. I hope you're well. This is going to be a story about childhood friends. Around 3 weeks ago, I met a very interesting woman in a queue. Now, just to refer back to Calvi-Set, people often forget that queues actually evolved in England as a means of social cohesion, and later became a means of social order. They were a means by which the English could communicate with each other without making direct eye contact. Because it's a great ability to be able to talk to somebody over your shoulder without actually having to look them in the face. And to my mind, that is really the true horror of the human centipede. So I met this woman in the queue. She was very interesting. Her name was Nee. There are 3 ways in which you can bond with people in a queue. They are to essentially comment on how slowly the queue is moving, why there is only one queue when there are so many people, and the third is over other annoying people who happen to be in the queue. Having broken the ice over the annoying person in front of us in the queue, I asked her what she did, and she said, well, I do a lot of things, but in the main I do a bit of writing. And I felt like we were kindred souls, because I also do a lot of things, and I do a bit of writing. And I asked her what she wrote, and she said, I write Famous Five fan fiction. And I thought to myself, fuckity fuck fuck. And she continued, I loved them when I was a child, and when I grew up, I wanted to take them with me. They were real to me then, but as I grew up, what was real changed, but I took them with me nevertheless. And this was intriguing enough for me to move our relationship to the next step. So we continued the conversation after we finished queuing. And she sat me down, opened up her laptop, and showed me her collection of Famous Five fan fiction. And most of you, I gather, probably know who the Famous Five are. For those of you who don't, I'm really hoping you have the courtesy not to rub your youth in the rest of our faces. And what Nee had done was that she had essentially taken the Famous Five and literally taken them with her. She brought them to the present day. They were essentially like the child stars of their day. And like most child movie stars, their past was going to shine brighter than their future could ever aspire to. They were basically the Macaulay Culkin and Justin Bieber of Surrey. Okay, so what she'd done was, through the mundanity of the protagonist's life, she had written a series of rather thoughtful and delightfully wicked titles. 5 Seek Planning Permission was both informative and entertaining. 5 and the Mystery of the Worrying Lump was a tasteful discussion of testicular cancer. 5 and the Mystery of Kirin Cottage was a very short book. All it said was, subsidence. 5 Have a Marvelous Gangbang was a bit unusual, I'll give you that. But what I found intriguing about Neves and what she had done was, unlike the rest of us, who tend to leave our childhood friends behind when they get boring and bigoted and tedious, she hadn't. She'd taken them with her, and she'd allowed them, she could have made them anyone she wanted them to be, but she'd allowed them to essentially complete the narrative arcs of their lives. Because face it, these were 4 kids who were cool in school, but by the time it came to yearbook time, their star was already fading. There was nothing in them that we knew of that would actually make them terribly interesting people. And they weren't. Julian was balding and uncertain. It's cool being an elder brother when you're 14, it means nothing when you're 52. Right? Dick was still trying to prove himself, and had campaigned to be a youth counsellor. And George, poor George, had no siblings, so her frustration and her defeat was entirely her own. There was nobody to share it, and there was nobody to blame at all. And it was a rather sorry cast of characters when you looked at them. But of course there was a 5th member of the Famous Five, Timothy the dog. And Timothy the dog still retained his eager and enthusiastic demeanor. Because that was the position he'd been stuffed in. Thank you very much.